welcome back to another episode of the Blue Honor Vlog. I'm Kay Williams, author of op-dec Operation Deceit, the Trailokia trilogy, and Blue Honor, for which the blog is named. Today I want to go back and look at a blog hop that I participated in, it looks like on October 3rd of 2016, so it's been quite a while since I wrote this. So as you know, this year I've been revisiting old blog entries to see my evolution on the answers, if there is any, if I have further insight on the topics, etc. So the question was asking about using senses and sensory details in your writing, and how does that work, especially when you're in the flow of writing and things are just coming to you. A lot of what we do as writers, you know, that first draft you could almost describe as a stream of consciousness. We're really just trying to get out the ideas that are in our head onto a piece of paper, proverbial piece of paper now, since it's like the computer, and go from there and figure out what it is that we really want to do, what we want to say, how we want to say it, how things are going to evolve, making sure the plot and everything, all of that stuff. That initial draft is almost always going to be wordy. You know, you're just throwing as much at the wall as you can, hoping it's going to stick. Some of the stuff you don't want to stick, but it's sticking. And that's why, you know, there's multiple drafts and massaging the writing out, etc. So when I was rethinking about this blog question, I thought about how awesome sensory details are for reducing your overwriting, how they can convey meaning to your characters, meaning to the story itself, meaning that you're trying to, you know, let your reader in on, etc., just with a few words, you know, a reaction that the character might have, or, you know, when considering something, the specific words that you use to describe, say, the object, whether it is the texture, the temperature, the view of it, the colors, etc., will reveal a lot about that character, where they're at, mood, etc., without you having to say to the reader, they felt this way. It's like I really don't have any examples at this moment. I'm like trying to think, and sensory details are fantastic, of course, for enhancing your story and immersing your reader. You don't want to, on the other end of this, overdo it, increasing your word count, right? And this is that careful little dance as writers that we have to undertake, especially when we're redrafting or submitting and whatnot. When an editor comes back and says you're a bit wordy, these may be the areas in which to look to kind of tone it down. Why are you describing the object? Why does it matter? For instance, when I was doing my master's degree in film, there's a term, mise en scene. The set, the objects, etc., they have purpose and meaning, generally speaking, whether that is to frame the character, but it gives tone and mood, all of the stuff, just like you can do in your book. So there's no reason for like your character to pick up the tissue and you to describe the whiteness and the softness and the papery texture, etc. Maybe they've used it and it's a bit wet. or they went to pick up and throw it away, and it was ew, ew, that's been used, that cold, wet, gah feeling, and now they're like, they recoil and they hit something, right? Knock it over, and that creates a whole to-do and stuff. They've broken something now, and those words and stuff convey that panic. I mean, I'm sure all of you know, like, cold, wet tissue is panic-inducing. It's disgusting. And it should fill you with dread and disgust and that understanding of exactly what that individual was feeling in that moment. Sorry for such a grotesque example, but effective. And I really liked this. You can look up this. It's number 65 of the Open Book Blog Hop. Writing is just like cooking. You'll use your knowledge of the art form to concoct a new recipe every time. Just like in cooking, some flavors go well together, and the use of spices must be carefully thought out. Less is more in many cases. That is something that you will hear on a lot of these cooking competitions. There are too many competing flavors in this dish. You did too much here. Simple is best. Same thing. When you're writing a sentence and you're conveying meaning, get to it. A lot of this extraneous, extra, whatever you want to call it, writing, all of, some pretty words, and you want to use them because they sound fantastic. That's great. Is it necessary? That's where you run into a lot of the responses from editors, agents, managers, publishers. You're wordy. You need to, adverbs and adjectives and descriptors, and it has to have a purpose. Just like in film, you have to think mise en scene. Why am I talking about this item? Why is it there? Why does it matter? Why am I talking about their feelings instead of showing them? I mean, if a character is attracted to a certain object, why are they attracted to that object? What is it that you're trying to say with that? So you have to be cognizant of why you're giving all this stage direction and how it is framing your character, telling things about your character, etc. If it's just to, move them around the room because that's what you're seeing in your head, and it has really no purpose, it is extraneous writing. You're making up. It's not needed. I mean, you could say, Gerard wandered about the room while saying, and you write out your dialogue, right? And then you might want to say something like, after all of that, Gwen noticed that his eyes continued to go to the book on the table. And she's not going to know. So, is he noticing that she's noticing? Because you have to stay within the correct perspective here, too. So, if you want to talk about the book and it's drawing his attention, you would want to almost, you want to make sure that you know whose eyes you're telling this piece of the story through, because you don't want to do head hopping. They don't like that, publishers. It's considered amateur. It's understandable because we almost feel like we're head hopping when we're watching television stuff, and that is a huge part of our experience with media, television and film. And it may seem that way. However, once you figure out who is actually telling the story in the film, you'll understand that it is constantly their perspective and their assumptions about the individual, the events that were happening, how they happened and unraveled, and who said what. And that should also kind of paint the mood and the tone and a little bit more of your understanding about why this is happening, how it's happening, and all of that. Same thing in books. It really is the same. When writing and talking about senses, just like everything else, less is more. Focus on why it's important. If you can't come up with a good reason as to why it's important, make yourself a little note. There's nothing wrong with those little tabbies, those little post-it tabbies that you can stick in there, and just write yourself like a little note on there, or even just a post-it note. In fact, if you've printed it out, you would do that. You can use comments in like a word program and just point to that and say, I really like this, but at this time I can't figure out why it's important. I don't have a good enough reason to keep this. This may be stricken later. Just note it for yourself. When reading through again, you may figure out, no, this was necessary because it alluded to something later on in the book that was really important, and this was kind of setting that up, so to speak. So sometimes it may seem like we don't consciously know what we're doing, and yet these things that we've done early on are still somehow managing to point to the things that we get to. And in fact, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because if we're thinking about these things at that early point, and we're trying to get to this space over here, we may already be thinking about that space. But there are things that are leading us as we're writing as well. Little clues, whether we're conscious, fully conscious of them or not. But writing sensibly is really important. Get those first couple of drafts done, but when you get to like the third and fourth, you should start thinking about the things that have got to go, that are just bogging you down. They don't add anything to the story. They're superfluous. You're just written some extra stuff. It sounds great on paper, I used these very cool words and I strung them together so well. You're still gonna have to axe them, and that's okay. And I hear you, I understand. It's like, but that was a grand, fantastic sentence, and I wrote that and I'm so proud of it and I don't want to let it go. You have to be able to let it go. There will be other fantastic grand sentences for you to be proud of within your writing. What's important is that all of the words within your manuscript are working. They're not just freeloading. They're not just sitting there looking pretty, trying to collect. It's not going to work. It's going to be picked out. You have to do as little of that as possible. So, say for instance, you wrote that grand sentence and you are wedded to it. I'm not letting this go. And the rest of it, you have been so good about, massaging everything down, making sure that it is as precise as you can get it. It's not wandering. Everything has a purpose. Leave it in. Go ahead and leave it in. It's your one sentence. It may not make it past the publisher. If you get picked up by a publisher, it may not make it past them. Your initial editor, before you send that to agents and publishers, it'll make it past, because you get to choose at that point what stays and what goes. But an editor, say you do publish with a top 5 publisher, they're going to make that decision for you. They're going to insist on things that are taken out, and you may be able to beg, but they're going to be like, nah, that really needs to go. It's just bogging everything down. It just doesn't make any sense. It looks kind of goofy there. So you no longer have that artistic choice. it becomes a business proposition, and they are going to do what's best for their business. And writing precisely and deliberately and making sure that every word is working and pulling its weight is all part of that. It isn't just the art. It is an expectation on the business side as well. So, wordsmithing is the point with us. That's what we do. We work with words day in and day out, and we make sure that we're using them properly and efficiently. And as I said, everybody's pulling their weight. You're going to have to let go those operatives that are not pulling their weight. They're not helping the company, so to speak. Sensory details are fantastic, but don't get bogged down in using them too much, because that can create overwriting, overtelling, just superfluous stuff. So that's where you're going to make the difference in how strong your writing is viewed by not only readers but publishers as well, if you're seeking to be published with big publishers. When you're independent, you're more concerned with what readers will think of you. I really like those sensory details. I tend to really like the flourishes of the Victorian novel. Some today call it overwriting, etc. I think that it was very beautiful writing, whereas the favor of today is to be writing more like Hemingway and very bare bones minimalist. And I don't care for that. I never really cared for that. It's not that they were bad ideas. I just feel like the writing wasn't as wonderful and as nice. And some people really, really love him, and they're entitled to that. That said, I prefer somebody like Poe to Hemingway any day of the week. And so you just want that economy of words, and to somehow meet in the middle, maybe, is a good thing, that there's some happy medium for you out there if you are like me and you prefer the writing of like a Victorian novel, something with a little bit more meat on those bones, and not something so naked as, say, a screenplay, because screenplays are extremely bare bones. And actually, that really is the point. It's the adaptation, the ease of adaptation. So if a novel does very well, it's very easy to adapt it when it's bare bones. So you're basically just shifting it over into the format of a screenplay and moving things into that. And there's a lot less that you have to hammer down and follow. And the screenwriter as well as the director don't have to worry about so much, they call them parentheticals, which are the directions that a writer might give to an actor. And an actor doesn't have to worry about, oh God, I got to read this book and know every move that this individual made because it's a book adaptation and I should probably know this and stuff. And very much they do read the book and try to encapsulate that, bring that in with them. Not everything translates to screen. Don't misunderstand me. Not everything translates to screen, and the director is still going to direct them. So whether they read it or not, and they have ideas because they read the book, the director also has ideas, so he's going to kind of push things and mold things his way. That's why they like the bearer books, so that this piece of media can be translated through other medias and easily over, which is a tragedy. Yeah, I mean, when it gets commodified like that, it's an absolute tragedy because they just strip it down to the barest of ideas, and then they allow everybody else to cannibalize it and change it and alter it into these other things. But at that point, it is about making them money, not so much the author. And that's kind of why I like independent authorship as well. I I really feel we need to take back the control of our intellectual property. We've allowed these individuals to earn so much off of us without getting our fair share, without what is due to us, because if we had not written this thing, they wouldn't be making a dime off of us. And they take so much in comparison to what an author is actually paid per sale. It is a travesty. It is unfair. But anyway, back to this again, October 3rd, 2016, and it is called Sensible Writing, or Writing Senses Sensibly. And it talks about how to take care with your choices of words while also managing to get some of those sensory details into a book to better immerse your audience. And you do want to do that. Immersive works are successful. People love that escapism. You're not writing nonfiction, although in those cases you can also do immersive writing. So, like really putting them in the scenario of what it is that you're, whether it's history or the mechanics even. So if you're properly using adjectives and descriptors, it's much easier for somebody to understand a motor and what they're looking at when you're describing it in words with, those little drawings that are so bare minimal and you're just like, what am I even looking at? So they may know better when you give descriptions of actual points on the machine itself, So don't think that it doesn't apply to nonfiction, but more so to writing fiction and all of that stuff. And hopefully this is a help to those would-be writers who have been hearing that they're too wordy, or they're not really sure which direction to go in. Like I said, go ahead and spit it out on the page, get it down. You can always write yourself little tags and stuff on the document itself, especially in Word. You have all those comments and it can point right to the thing. You can have numerous of them, and just remind yourself, I need to go over this later. I don't know how important it is to go into this level of detail with this. If it refers back to something later, fine, keep it. If not, it's just wait. You want to make sure that your book is fit, it's trim, it's exactly what it needs to be, and all these little side quest thoughts, they're for you. I guess that's the thing. You can always keep a copy where they're all in there, right? And just reminisce like, oh, I loved that sentence so much, but it did have to go because it was extra weight, and I had too much extra weight. Being able to trim the fat it's hard, but that's why we do so many edits and so many drafts. So you'll draft it like 6, 7, many more times than that, and finally hand it off to an editor, and they'll make a couple sweeps. Your proofreader will even read it, your beta readers will read it, and you'll still be cutting and massaging and re-editing, trying to figure out, did I need to talk about that, paperweight on page 39? Did it matter, I guess it matters if they use it to throw at somebody, right? But hopefully this has been a help to you, and I will see you back here next month. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe, please. Thank you.